If we do not believe in freedom of speech for those we despise, we do not believe in it at all. Those are the words of Noam Chomsky. Now, no reasonable human being would say that Noam Chomsky, pictured here with, well, a known right-wing extremist, would himself be a right-wing extremist, even if these words are now associated with right-wing extremism. No, Professor Chomsky here is 100% a product of the left, and actually, up until the pandemic, pretty much walked it like he talked it. I respected the man's intellectual honesty. Once upon a time, the left was the team, the party, the side of free speech. Back in the Berkeley days, what was it Robert Anton Wilson said? That one could find oneself as the Overton window shifts, going from hardcore liberal to hardcore conservative over the course of 20 years without changing a single belief. Yeah, well, the Overton window is shifting like that. Again, they used to be the team, the side, the party of free speech. But now, well, as depicted here in this political cartoon, some exclusions apply. Because now, you're not even allowed to break from the orthodoxy on any level, including if you are a product of the left yourself. Witness what happened to Matt Taibbi. Now, again, no reasonable human being would think of Taibbi as a product of anything but the left. He cut his teeth working for Rolling Stone. He actually lived in Russia for a while. Left-leaning articles from the word go. But the one thing about Taibbi and the next gentleman that I'm going to present is that they still have their balls and their spines, and they've still got a passion for truth, and can still call out extremism when they see it, even in their own party. Witness what happened to him before a congressional subcommittee. Witness what has happened to him being labeled a right-wing extremist for having the audacity to point out how a private company at the behest of the United States government was censoring free speech. Glenn Greenwald, man who broke the Edward Snowden story, guy who railed against right-wing extremists in Brazil, is now finding himself labeled a right-wing extremist for having the audacity to say that the left has gone too far in its pursuit of censorship. And I'll give you the easy pop culture reference. Yes, this pretty motherfucker right here. I'm talking about Russell Brand. I used to find this guy an insufferable twat waffle by any standard of measure. But god damn it, he is seriously, in much the same way as Bill Maher, come around. I won't go so far as to call him a right-wing extremist, even though a lot of people are. He is still a product of the left, but he is intellectually honest and ideologically consistent. But this is the way that the left, the former party of free speech, treats its own. If you break from the religion, you are an apostate and will be crucified accordingly. So if this is the way they treat their own, you can imagine what came uncorked this week when the favorite target of the left, talking about little Tucker here. Now again, I don't deify Tucker. We probably couldn't be friends at the very least. I don't dig his taste in sweaters. But he came forward with literally 14,000 hours of January 6th footage. Stuff that was kept from the American public. Now again, this is sheer, straight video footage that anyone can look at and come to their own conclusions. We were treated for the last 2 years to images like this, and of course, the QAnon shaman himself. But while we're on the subject of the surveillance footage, it was found that a lot of the things that we were told were outright lies. That's right, QAnon shaman here was actually escorted around the building by Capitol Police. The only person killed was a protester, Ashley Babbitt. The 5 police that lost their lives that fateful day, turns out none of that was true at all. Officer Sicknick was shown on the video walking around alive, well, and healthy hours after the mainstream media told us he had been, and I quote, beaten to death with a fire extinguisher. That seems like a bit of an oversight for the mainstream media, don't you think? But here's the scary part. It would be one thing for the left to ridicule Taibbi. It would be one thing for the left to reject Greenwald. It would be one thing for the left to reject Brand and to hate Tucker. These are the things that they already do. But above and beyond, in all cases, they are calling for outright censorship. They are calling for Tucker to be pulled off the air. They are calling for Brand to be deplatformed. They are calling for all mainstream outlets. The only person that will carry Greenwald anymore is Fox, because they're the only people that have any integrity left, and Taibbi is finding himself in the same camp. No, boys and girls, they are not about live and let live and an open marketplace of ideas. Anything that runs contrary to their narrative is a crime that must be shut down forcibly. Now, I am an absolutist about free speech, and it doesn't matter if we're talking about Noam Chomsky's free speech, or Glenn Greenwald's, or Matt Taibbi's, or Russell Brand's, or even Tucker Carlson, or the QAnon shaman. You are either for free speech or you are fucking not. And I really don't care what labels they choose to hang on me, because in the words of H.L. Mencken, the trouble with fighting for human freedom, I mean real freedom, not the freedom to protect our democracy at the expense of your personal rights. The trouble with fighting for human freedom is that one spends most of one's time defending scoundrels. For it is against scoundrels that oppressive laws are first aimed, and oppression must be stopped at the beginning if it is to be stopped at all. Who's a scoundrel nowadays? Tucker Carlson, if you ask anyone in the mainstream media. Matt Taibbi is on the edge of scoundrel. Let's call him scoundrel adjacent, but I'd even go so far as to say the left might even turn on one of their all-fathers, Noam Chomsky, for having the audacity to utter those words. But what really does constitute a scoundrel? How about we pick two heroes of free speech and see whose interpretation of scandal holds true? This comatose bodyguard hillbilly drug addict smut peddler? Or how about this beloved children's author? They're both on the same level of scoundrel as far as I'm concerned, and I will defend them the way one must defend scoundrels, because if anyone's going to head off assaults against free speech, it's got to be headed off while it's still being aimed at people that are considered scoundrels, whether it's Larry Flint, whether it's J.K. Rowling, whether it's Alex Jones. And the mainstream media certainly isn't going to carry the torch. You knew we weren't getting through an opener without at least one Orwell quote. Political writing in our time consists almost entirely of prefabricated phrases bolted together like the pieces of a child's Meccano set. It is the unavoidable result of self-censorship. I want you to get your head around that for a minute. There is no worse censorship, in my view, than self-censorship, particularly when it is representatives of an ostensibly free press. Orwell goes on, to write in plain, vigorous language, one has to think fearlessly, and if one thinks fearlessly, one cannot be politically orthodox. We don't need to touch on the mainstream figures here, like Chomsky or like Carlson, but Taibbi certainly exhibits that fearlessness. Greenwald has exhibited that fearlessness for years. Brand is catching on to that fearlessness. And J.K. Rowling has had to learn it the hard way, as even her own core audience turned on her, egged on by the rage of an angry mob. Self-censorship is terrible, but when it comes from outside, at least it is a target that can be fought. And as Laurie Mays Anderson reminds us, censorship is the child of fear, the father of ignorance, and the desperate weapon of fascists everywhere. So in my view, if we are to fight it, we have to reject fear, rise above and fight ignorance. And if they're ready to take it all the way, we'll show them what the fuck a weapon looks like. The opinions expressed by the Reverend are his own and no one else's on the planet. Not friends, not foes, not supporters, not detractors, not sponsors, and I cannot stress this enough, certainly not employers. They have been adjudicated thought crime in all jurisdictions. Consider yourself warned. They are coming from the heart. They are guided by the mind. They are guaranteed to choke you with a big, fat dose of truth cock that you will not live long enough to never forget. Welcome back, boys and girls. Time once again for the Sunday sermon. Ooh, a little fired up this week, man. Little fired up. Appreciate y'all being here. We're going to do a roll call here, but right now, everybody in for the drum roll. Let's go, guys. Yes. Coming hard, charging right out of the gate, as we always do, the ever-popular bumper music from the band Red Desert, little gut-stomping rock and roll band from the smoldering embers and ruins of the once great city of Minneapolis, Minnesota. The name of the band is Red Desert. The name of the track is, boys and girls, Older No Wiser, because every week I get a little bit older, and every week you guys get to decide if I have gotten any wiser. We're taking a peek over here to the comment thread. We'll see who's already on board. Oh, yes. Brother Roman on board early. OG Prophet of Doom, Reverend's Ranger, Mr. Dennis Weimer. What was that? Figured I'd come listen to this crotchety old rabble-rouser. You know, I prefer to think of myself as a controversialist ruckus farmer. That's what we're going with. But that doesn't really lend itself well to a hashtag. Brother Ryan, howdy, gents. Hey, careful. Don't use that G word with me unless you're using it loosely, my brother. Brother Joel Allen Jackson on board. Bill Wade, good to see you, brother. You've come to the right place. We are going to hear about Tucker and Ukraine, America bombing the pipeline. Bro, we're going to hear about a lot of things. A lot of free speech issues this week. Man, yeah. Plenty to say about that, but mostly it's going to be First Amendment stuff. But you knew we weren't going to get through a whole program without covering it. And the QAnon shaman, yes, indeed. Emmy, the original Sinner Sister herself. Great to have you on board, sweetheart. What is this? Oh, my goodness. Moving to Denmark, I have to think about my family. You and yours ever need a place to stay, Rev, you're more than welcome. Andrea, thank you. Andrea, you're amazing. And I really appreciate you extending that offer. I tell you what, do me a favor, sweetheart, if you're still watching, hit me with a personal message to my inbox, because like shifting gear from Norway over to Denmark, I'm sort of interested in what might be motivating that. So kind of hit me up, give me a little heads up on it. Joey on board, good evening, Mr. and Miss America and all the ships at sea. Howdy, kids. The sarcasm. Always a pleasure to see everybody, man. We're missing a couple of the usual suspects this week. I totally get it. We're running about an hour late. Had some things I needed to take care of over in Seattle. As you guys know, may or may not know, depending on how long you've been around, I do a little MC thing here and there. I get to put on my suit and be Mr. Showtime. I've worked for a number of fight promotions, including the early days of Salsa Lee's Renegade show back in Houston, Texas. All you old school guys, you'll remember me from that. Speaking of, by the way, yeah, I did MC Rick Little's show, Excite Fight. Rick Little is the same guy who is the top dog at Sick Jitsu. If you guys know, Mike Chiesa, Sam Cecilia, Juliana Pena. We're talking like Ultimate Fighter season winners. You know what I mean? He coached Misha Tate. He's got 2 world champions under his belt. Tons of really great fighters up here. He has done more to put the Pacific Northwest on the national and global MMA mat than anyone else. And so I've worked. That is currently the fight promotion that I do my MC work for. as well as one down in Houston for Reed Shelger, who took very good care of me when I was working as a strength and combatives coach over at Paradigm MMA back in the day. While we are on the subject of combatives in MMA, I just wanted to, I'm not gonna belabor it. You guys know that I devoted an entire program to reflecting on the death of Saul Solis, because he was my best friend for 30 plus years, and it took. There was a lot. There was just a lot to cover there. We're not going to devote, also because his death was somewhat unexpected. This one has been in the works for a while. Ajahn Pong to see you, has passed away. Anyone who has been associated with any of the combative sports in Houston, Texas, he's been in failing health for years, and his family has largely carried him, and his legacy, of course, will continue to carry on. But I did want to take a brief moment of silence. He was a mentor to both Saul and I back in the early days. In fact, Roman was around about that same time, and I remember telling Roman the story that I had heard at I was wearing a USMTA T-shirt. That's Triceratops organization. I walked into a Thai restaurant and struck up a conversation with one of the Thais that worked there at the restaurant, and they told me, "Hey man, there's an old man that teaches over at he's an old man, former champion, teaches over at the temple." I mentioned it to Saul in passing. Didn't really think anything of it, and then suddenly fast forward a few months and I'm getting ready for my first fight out at Fairtex, and I noticed that the intensity level had just skyrocketed, and we're doing all these new drills and stuff. And Saul always played it close to the vest. He kept it very cagey, and finally I called him on it. I was like, "Bro, what the fuck is going on?" And he said, "Look man, I went and I found that guy at the temple, and I've been training with him. He is a chef over at Thai Pepper," which he was at the time. I've been training, in between lunch shift and dinner shift. We've been going out and hitting the pads back in the lot behind the restaurant, and everything's different now. And it was from then on. Ajahn Pong, people refer to him as Kru Pong. Those of you guys that know the difference in the weight that is carried between Kru and Ajahn will know that while he might prefer, because his humility was genuine like that, he might actually prefer Kru. But you're not going to talk me off of Ajahn when it comes to Ajahn Pong, and his legacy will continue to resonate throughout Houston, Texas, Muay Thai and MMA. Wonderful human being, wonderful chef. I'll never forget, man. I'll never forget if you ever had him hold pads for you. It was, punch now, kick now, smile please. Unnerving as hell. Smile please. Always smile please. But he had his own gym. He had his own restaurant for a bit, and just a really incredible human being. And he made a mark, not just on the scene, but on Saul. And I'm glad that they are reunited. Fellas, if you don't mind, I'm going to wait a little bit. I've still got a lot to take care of down here before I join you. Definitely he made an impact. So just brief, if I could just get you guys to join me just in silent contemplation of that. Just give me 5 or 10 seconds here. Just a little bit for respect for Kru Pong and everything that he represents, and of course prayers of strength for the family going forward. Thank you, Ajahn Pong, for everything that you did for us. All right, on to happier things. Yes, Brother Ryan, that's where I met him through Dominique, the Thai Temple up 290. Yeah, man, back in the day, good Lord, we're dating ourselves, right, Ryan? I mean, like, by mentioning that, and, Roman, you too, buddy. I mean, you go all the way back to the Denver Harbor days, so we're definitely, like, dating ourselves, and a lot of the new school, Houston, well, Texas across the board. A lot of the new school Texas MMA guys have no idea, what we're talking about, and that's totally all right. Steve Jetton, I'm glad you made it in, brother. Glad you made it in. In fact, man, we're kind of overdue for a phone call, man. I'm going to see if I can't knock that out. If not tonight, like early part of this week. But thanks for swinging by, Steve. We're going to jump on into the program. You guys already know how we're kicking it off. We're starting off with, and thankfully, nothing esoteric this week. God damn it. I think he's probably cutting me slack after a couple of weeks. You know, he's letting me get back into my wheelhouse a little bit. Thank you for that. Guys, you guys know me. One of the things that Ryan and I bonded over early on, and of course, he's opened a lot of doors for me, started me off on my crane operator journey. You know, love him like my own flesh and blood. One of the things that we bonded over early is we were both repositories of useless information. And we're murder to play a game of Trivial Pursuit with. Don't even try it. It's going to be painful and embarrassing for you. In fact, just trying to hang with us in a conversation over a cup of coffee once we get about third or fourth shot of espresso, don't even bother, man, because it's going to be like watching a tennis match and the eyes glaze over. But every week we get a little bit off the beaten path and we take you down Ryan's rabbit hole, and it's become a very popular segment, and it's what we open the show with every week. We get a little off the beaten path. We take you down a little piece of history of which you might not have been previously familiar, a particular individual, a particular theory, a hidden bit of esoteric knowledge, just a little something, you know, to kind of broaden your horizons a little bit, or maybe scare you a little bit, or at least change your worldview in some small way. And we try to do that just a little bit at a time every single week. Some weeks we go historical, some weeks we go philosophical, some weeks we go conspiratorial, some weeks we go esoteric, and Ryan really makes me fucking work for it. And I wind up giving lectures on quantum physics for dummies, from one dummy to the rest of us. In any case, this week we are getting political and historical. I'm gonna have to spell the guys. I'll pronounce it for you first. Reino Haihanen. Reino Haihanen. Wow, that's a really fucked off name. What the hell is that? Yeah, Finland. Here is the thing about Finland. And the other, it sounds like vaguely like someone else you might have heard of with a Finnish name who was a historical figure of sorts, Simo Häyhä, who was the Finnish sniper during the Winter War, who basically, he had hundreds of confirmed kills with that Finnish M39, Mosin Nagant. And you know, if I'd had a little more time, I should have thought about it, popped open the gun safe, because I actually have an old Finnish M39. But he clipped, good Lord, he clipped hundreds of Soviet soldiers and continued to rack up confirmed kills even after having half of his jawbone blown out of his skull with an incoming rifle round. Yeah, the Finns are some tough motherfuckers. And the Finns and the Russians have a bit of, shall we say, a tortured history. Speaking with regard to their rifles, you know what, I'll get back to that in a minute. Well, let's go down the rabbit hole. Reino Haihanen he worked for the NKVD. The NKVD, when you think in terms of American intelligence agencies, right? You know that there is the CIA, and then there is the no such agency. There is the NSA, which is the stuff of myth and legend, and quite a bit scarier when one contemplates the reach that it has. If you can think of NKVD, they worked closely with the KGB, which is the rough Russian equivalent, Soviet equivalent of the CIA, but they also worked with the GRU. The GRU for the Soviets, sometimes referred to as the others. The hit squads for the GRU, if you can imagine the reach of, if you can imagine everyone who worked for the NSA basically being a fat, old, and often drunk version of John Wick, yeah, that's what you're looking at here. In any case, Reino Haihanen, he was ethnically Finnish. However, back in the day, again, because of their tortured history between the two countries, right after the start of the Winter War, in the early 1940s, the Soviets invaded Finland, while Simo Häyhä was out, you know, blowing the skulls out of Soviet soldiers on the battlefield. Reino here basically worked as, he was an interpreter. I don't want to give too many spoiler alerts here. He was an interpreter. That was his official function with the KGB and the GRU, Ministry of State Security, recruited him because he was ethnic Finn to be an interpreter, more or less. He is commemorated, by the way. He is commemorated on a coin, which is unusual for someone who actually worked with the Soviets against the Finns. But over the course of the Cold War, he developed a number of contacts with American intelligence. There was a case called the Hollow Nickel case. I will let you delve into that again. This is y'all's rabbit hole. Chase it as far down as you feel like going. A microfilm that had been hidden inside of a case that was made to look like a U.S. coin and could be thrown into the pocket where it would, mix in with all your other change and not be anything suspect. Anyway, the microfilm in question implicated a number of double agents, people who were working with the Soviets against the United States, and it was Reino Heihanen who was able to expose a number of those double agents. We are talking things that have been passed to the Soviets, including information on the U.S. atomic bomb program, on U.S. nuclear submarines. But they were very high-ranking, including Rudolf Abel, very high-ranking members of U.S. intelligence. I won't go so far as to say McCarthy was right, but McCarthy was right. A number of high-ranking intelligence agents within the United States. And it took Reino Heihanen to expose that and to lay that bare to where no denials by the FBI or any other U.S. intelligence agency could override the fact that these people were, in fact, working for the Soviets. So again, the search terms are going to be Reino Heihanen, and let me spell that and make sure that I get the spelling correct on this. REINOHA umlaut YHA umlaut NEN. Reino Heihanen. Look into that. You can also look into Rudolf Abel and the Hollow Nickel case. How does this still apply to modern day? Because much like then, and we could use a few more folks like Heihanen. We could definitely use a few more to be able to yeah, right, okay, Emmy knew exactly who I was talking about. But yes, and we have James Pearson on board too. I'll get back to the roll call in a second. There are operatives for foreign powers, always have been, always will be, with regard to, we are not locked in the surface level life or death that we were during the Cold War, right? During Reino Heihanen's era. We are not locked in that kind of struggle. However, we still have adversaries. One of the two strongest of those does remain hardcore communist, and they have people who have infiltrated research centers, universities, and of course we've done the same over there. It's more difficult for us to work our way in there because they are culturally homogenous, which is to say everyone in China is 99.9% fucking Chinese. One of the vulnerabilities that we have is specifically our multiculturalism, and it has enabled a number of people to penetrate at high levels, including our intelligence agencies. We don't have many of the likes of Reino Heihanen in circulation anymore. And even the ones that we would have, if they were ethnic Russian, we have alienated because of our inexplicable and servile support of Ukraine. In any case, go down the rabbit hole here. It's going to be an interesting little piece of Cold War history, but keep in mind that the infiltration, the cloak and dagger stuff, the double agents on playing both sides of the coin in this case being a hollow nickel, ha ha ha, see what I did there. It goes on to this day. It's not us and the Soviet menace anymore. Now it is more sinister in the conflict in which we are currently locked with the communist Chinese, and it's worse because at least during the Reagan era, right, my ass into the Cold War, coming up through high school, even the more liberal elements of the mainstream media could at least admit that we were involved in a conflict. They didn't try to, I mean, obviously, they couldn't work up a whole lot of hatred for Soviet Russia the way that they, I mean, if they hated Soviet Russia the way that they hate modern Russia, we probably could have shaved 20 years off the fucking Cold War. The point is this. Back then, they would at least acknowledge that the relationships we were in was adversarial. Back then, we at least had people like Reino Haihanen who would cooperate with us, even if it was for his own personal gain, to expose double agents within our own ranks. We don't have that kind of stroke anymore. It's a very dangerous time. Also, before we go on, look into the mysterious circumstances behind Haihanen's death, because that's always the mark, right? When a cloak and dagger guy goes out in a car accident or unusual disease or mysterious suicide, yeah, that's usually a pretty good indicator. So that's Reino Haihanen. That is your rabbit hole for the day, your rabbit hole for the week, actually, because, yeah, that's going to be about a week's worth of rabbit hole for you. So thank you once again to Ryan for sending us down another little rabbit hole here. Let's see who all came on board while we were going through the rabbit. So we got Steve Jetton, brother James Pearson. Glad you made it in. Don't worry about it, man. I'm running an hour late my damn self because I had to make the long drive back in for Seattle after emceeing the fight show. And of course, right. But diversity is our strength. Yes, of course, diversity is our strength, motherfucker. Joey, you owe me a Coke. All right, guys, let's get off into this thing, shall we? bullet point number one, boys and girls. Bullet point number one. Let me see. Completely fucking took me out of my frame there. Yes. Hustler and Harry Potter. What the fuck? You guys know, and I touched on this in the opener, and we're going to go over a lot of this stuff because it is something that is in my wheelhouse. It is an item which I am infinitely passionate about, ferociously passionate about, and that is freedom of expression, freedom of speech, freedom of expression. No exceptions, none of the time, period. It is a zero-sum game for me. When I say I am an absolutist, I mean that in every sense of the word. Yes, I do feel like that gives you the right to use that harsh N-word. I won't use it here because it'll get me banned from YouTube. But I'm a white guy. I can say nigga with the soft R. It absolutely does give you the right to use that word. You can expect an ass whooping for it in most circumstances. I feel like it does give you the right to yell fire in a crowded theater. I also feel like it is self-regulating because it gives everybody else the right to beat the fuck out of you when they figure out there's not a fire. It is essentially self-regulating. I am an absolutist when it comes to matters of free speech and free expression. If you are the enemy of free speech, on any level, under any premise, you are my enemy. You are, as far as I am concerned, an existential threat, not just to all things Western, but I will take it personally. I do not hold any trust for anyone who would tolerate any assertions of rule or regulation limiting free speech, anyone's free speech under any premise. Are we clear? You guys tracking with me on this one? Yeah, but what about, no, that too. That too. Hopefully this Christmas, Charlie and I will get a chance to record this. But it's a little something that we do as we're driving around looking for Christmas presents or Christmas trees or whatnot. And she gives my wife sings like an angel. And she sings "Oh Holy Night" from the passenger seat. And I synchronize with "Oh Holy Night" delivering Khalid Muhammad's "Kill the White Man" speech. You kill them all. You kill the men, kill the women, kill the crazy, kill the faggots, kill the lesbians. I said, you goddamn kill them all. And then dig them up and kill them a goddamn again because they didn't die hard enough. True story. It's an amusing thing to watch. What that guy advocated for, may he rest in peace. And I miss Khalid Muhammad. When I say that I'm an absolutist, I mean absolutist. I miss Khalid Muhammad for two reasons. Number one, you can't buy hate that fucking pure. You just can't. His hatred for my people was as pure as Christ's love. And it was genuine. It was authentic. And I love that in people. Particularly ones that I hate. Particularly ones that hate me. In fact, almost especially people that are calling for my extinction. Because, back to Chomsky, if we do not believe in freedom of speech for those we despise, we do not believe in it at all. So, hearing Khalid Muhammad rail like that. Now, obviously, if the day came, I'll see you across the barricade, Khalid. And to quote one of my favorite films, I can promise you a day of reckoning that you will not live long enough to never forget. But as long as it's rhetoric, as long as it's words, I love it because you can't buy hate that pure, and you can't buy that kind of authenticity of hate or any other emotion, that brutal honesty. I love it. It moves me down to my soul. But moreover, the fact that he can say this out loud in a public place, as he did, and you can find the video online if you want to go look for it, lets me know he can say that and not have government troops of any kind come running into that church where he was giving a speech and put that man in cuffs and take him away to a camp. That lets me know that we still live in a representative republic where we still have the freedom to say whatever we wish, however loathsome, however hateful, however false. We can speak it. And the government, the ever powerful state, has no power to come in and silence us. That is how I feel about free expression. It is close to my heart. Once upon a time, let me just go ahead and tell you what I've been on, the tip that I've been on. There is a podcast that I'm going to recommend. I'm not associated with the people that do the podcast. Obviously, they are not friends of mine. They're not associated with the program. But there is a podcast from a website called The Free Press, and that podcast is called The Witch Trials of J.K. Rowling. I'm an old man. There are clearly some on this comment thread that are older. Right, exactly, right. And yes, it is. It's like the Bing Crosby David Bowie thing, but with a lot of racial animosity, Joey. That's what it's like. I'm an old man. I've lived for a long time, and I've watched the cycle. Remember the quote from Robert Anton Wilson in the opener. that as the window of politics, the Overton window of politics shifts, that one can find oneself transitioning from a liberal to a conservative over a period of 20 years without changing one single iota of their worldview. I'm paraphrasing because I'm quoting from memory. You guys can look up the quote if you want. Once upon a time, there was a gentleman by the name of Larry Flint, a drunken, no doubt cousin fucking hillbilly smut peddler that liked taking really, really nasty pictures of women's hairy naughty bits back in the 70s. He was also very fond of parodying members of the religious right. And at that time, those members of the religious right were the existential threat to free speech. What did I say at the beginning? If you are the enemy of free speech, you are my fucking enemy. And I don't care which side you're on. Young metalhead Bart was being told by these people that I could, and again, who wants to be told that they can't look at naked women when you're going through puberty? But beyond that, for me it was deeper. Pardon the pun. Because across the board, the Jesus crowd, and when I say the Jesus crowd, I in no way intend to disparage all Christians or all Christianity or all Abrahamic religions. You guys know the ones that I'm talking about. The Jerry Falwells of the world, the Pat Robertsons of the world, the Jim Bakkers of the world, for those of you old enough to remember the PTL scandal, the Jimmy Swaggarts of the world, who oddly enough would later become one of my biggest influences as a performer. I was raised in the church. I was steeped in the scriptures, and I was brought up with all of that. As my worldview started to shift as I entered puberty, and as I started getting into the thing, I found myself at personal odds with a lot of the stuff that I'd been taught. Not just on a religious and spiritual level, but particularly when it came down to, you're not going to tell me what I can or cannot say. You are not going to tell me what I can or cannot listen to. You guys remember the Satanic Panic. Everything was evil. We can't look at porn because it would anger Jesus. We can't look at porn because it's evil. It's sin. It's a sin against God. I would not have that. You can't listen to heavy metal because it is a sin against God and it promotes Satanism. Wow, that's interesting. I would not have that put to me. And at the time, it seemed like the Jesus crowd, well, I mean, it's a fact. At the time, the Jesus crowd was the existential threat to free speech and free expression. What did Mencken have to say about it? That fighting for human freedom in the early stages, it's the scoundrels that they try to pass the oppressive laws for. Scoundrels like this fella. And make no mistake, Flint was a fucking scoundrel. He was a scoundrel of the highest order. But I would not let the Jesus crowd, the Jesus junkies, as I refer to them, again, not disparaging Christians or Christianity. You guys know the ones that I'm talking about. Anyone, Christian or otherwise, tries to stifle free speech and free expression under any premise. What did I say at the beginning, at the opening? You are my enemy. Expect to be treated accordingly. The Jesus junkies would not have us listen to heavy metal music because it was introducing us to Satanism. We could not look at pornography because it was a sin against God. We could not listen to this person, that person. It was a sin. It was a sin. It was a sin. But as Robert Anton Wilson said, you can go from being a liberal to a conservative over a period of 20 to 30 years without changing a single one of your core beliefs. Where are we now, boys and girls? It's the same sentiment. You can't look at that porn, not because Jesus wouldn't like it, but because it degrades women. Okay, make your case for that, but you don't get to dictate to me. You don't get to dictate to me what I can or can't look at. At least one of you out there right now is sort of wanting to throw in the potential. What about kiddie porn? That's sort of like throwing nuclear weapons into the gun control debate. You think the Second Amendment gives you the right to own nuclear weapons? No, but there are already restrictions in place for nuclear material, so that's an irrelevant argument. If you're going to bring a straw man into the debate, let me know so I can put out my cigarette. Same thing with the kiddie porn. There's already 9 miles of regulation in place about sexual abuse of minors, right? And if someone presents photographs of that sexual abuse that is already regulated, there is a word for that. It's called evidence. And it will be entered into a locker, and it will be used to prosecute the motherfucker, who will promptly be ass raped and killed by every big buck nigga soft A on D Block. BBC's waiting for you, Sparky. You diddled a kid. God help your mortal fucking soul. Okay? Just wanted to get that out of the way real quick, because there's always somebody out there that will take it to that fucking extreme. If we're having the gun control debate, well, what about fucking nuclear weapons? We're having the pornography debate. What about fucking kids, man? Come on. Just stop. Just don't. And right now, there's at least a couple of you out there going, dude, we're not. Nobody said that. Just wanted to get it out of the way. Who are you arguing with? Shut up, Kevin. Kevin, one of the voices in my head. We have gone full circle now. In the early days, it was the Jesus junkies who said you couldn't listen to heavy metal because it was witchcraft. Now, the left is saying we can't listen to certain types of black metal because it is alt-right adjacent and therefore politically incorrect. We actually have a memo that circulated out of nanny state Britain just last week saying that reading Tolkien, for fuck's sake, is basically a gateway drug to right-wing extremism. We can argue the politics of that another time, and we should. Because it's obvious where they're going with that. All the great works of Western literature being slowly but surely pushed out, because the easiest way to erase a culture is to erase their own sense of self and their own cultural and racial identity and their own history. That's a subject for another time. Right now, speaking strictly with regard to freedom of speech, this young lady right here, J.K. Rowling, the richest self-made woman on the planet. Jeff Bezos' ex has more money than her now, but basically earned it through a divorce, so that doesn't count. She was a darling of the left. And at the time, same Jesus junkies that thought my heavy metal shouldn't be permitted in front of kids because it was introducing them to Satanism, they would say that Harry Potter should not be allowed in front of kids. Why? Because it introduced them to witchcraft. I want you to listen to that podcast, The Witch Trials of J.K. Rowling. Full disclosure, I have never read so much as a preface to a Harry Potter book. Not once. I saw 30 minutes of one of the movies once, kind of in the background, and I couldn't even begin to tell you which one. Not a fan of the series. Don't know what a muggle is, or a Hufflepuff. These were things that were coming up during the podcast that I'm just like, what the fuck is a Hufflepuff? Doesn't matter, irrelevant. Even having learned this new respect for J.K. Rowling, because and the episodes are still trickling out. You know me, I do deep dives. I went through the first episode and I was like, okay, let's go back and let's do some homework. And oh my God, not only is she as badass as they presented her, but here's 6 other factors of badass that I didn't even fucking know about. I cannot wait to hear the second episode of this podcast. So they give the second episode, give some more of her background information. I go on another deep dive. J.K. Rowling is a fucking incredible woman. A fucking incredible woman. And in my pantheon of free speech heroes, she has assumed her rightful place right next to this fella. What the fuck? Yes. Because Larry Flint took a bullet while he was going through those trials. Again, another one of those mysterious accidents, like Reno Haihanen kind of shit. Mysterious people under mysterious circumstances. He got shot. They never caught the guy that shot him. Paralyzed from the chest down. Shitting into a bag for the rest of his fucking life. Larry Flint was not a good human being by any stretch of the fucking imagination. I am not a good human being by a lot of people's standards. But Larry Flint's significance when it comes to free speech, he took that bullet for all of us. And people don't really have a full appreciation, particularly those for whom free speech, for me but not for thee, don't have a full appreciation of it. I'm sure that Noam Chomsky probably wouldn't have had a very pleasant conversation with Larry fucking Flint. But Chomsky meant it when he said it. If we don't advocate for free speech and free expression of people who we despise, then we don't believe in it at all. But what's been the most telling? The observation over the long trajectory of J.K. Rowling's career. And there are some corollary issues, and you'll get a lot more from it if you listen to the entire podcast. I was not aware, because I didn't do Tumblr culture, right? And outside of Facebook, really did not do a whole lot of social media. I was not aware that a lot of the cancel culture and woke terms and woke ideology came about as a result of Tumblr culture. And in fact, was unaware that your fave is problematic. They bring that up here in the podcast. Basically started out as a joke. Oh, that's your hero? Well, here's 100 social justice reasons why that person's a bad fucking person. All of a sudden, it was problematic to like anyone. J.K. Rowling was a victim of domestic violence, up to and including rape. She found a way to turn her entire life around and find her own strength and find her own power, and was beloved by a generation until... You've heard me say before that heroic men have heroic flaws, right? So when you're judging a person, it's real easy to look at that one flaw. When you're judging J.K. Rowling, same thing applies. The same people that loved her turned on her because she had the audacity to vary from the orthodoxy. Do you understand how this works? It's the same, and we went over this in the opener with Taibbi. When Taibbi was writing for Rolling Stone, they loved him because he was carrying water. He was left leaning, right, but he was a genuine journalist, at least as objective as one could expect from a mainstream source like Rolling Stone. Same thing with Greenwald. Oh my God, they loved him. They loved Greenwald when he was banging on the right wing nut jobs in Brazil. When they love Greenwald when he's bagging on Bolsonaro. Didn't love him so much for the Edward Snowden thing. And he caught flack from the left and the right, but Greenwald, make no mistake, he's solidly a product of the left, and they turned on him because he varied from the orthodoxy. If we don't believe in free speech for people we despise, we don't believe in it at all. Larry Flynt was generally hated across the board by everyone, right? But again, it was the Jesus junkies at first that hated Flynt. Probably someone acting on behalf of the Jesus junkies that put that bullet through his fucking spine. But some of the same people on that one particular team that loved him when he was pushing to sanctify degeneracy, basically. And don't get me wrong, I'm not judging here. There's a lot to be said for degeneracy. I'm a huge porn fan, right? Make no mistake about that. I want that understood clearly from the word go. I love the bizarre shit. I love the rough shit. I love the degrading and the filthy and the fisting and the trannies. I love it all. But it's degeneracy, man. Let's call it what the fuck it is. It is absolute fucking degeneracy. The people that wanted to deify degeneracy were squarely on the left back in the day. It was the Jesus junkies that wanted to shut Flynt down. Now that he's passed, it's irrelevant. But later on, in his last days, it was the left that wanted to crucify him. Oddly enough, for some of the same reasons that the Jesus junkies didn't like. Once you remove the Bible from the equation, the arguments were basically the same. Roman, you remember Andrea Dworkin. I know Roman remembers Andrea Dworkin. Hardcore so-called feminist. Cuckoo Kajou, because that bitch is a walrus. Only simple-minded people believe people aren't complex. The worst can be right and the so-called best can be wrong. Very profound there, Brother Pearson. Very profound. Roald Dahl is being censored. Right, Andrea, spot on. And I did a whole thing on that. You can go on the YouTube. You're watching on YouTube. Check out last week. I did like the whole opener on what they're doing with Roald Dahl. Harry Potter books are a hell of a lot better than the movies. Speak as a mom who reads to her kids. Andrea, I believe you. I do. I absolutely believe you. I have no reason to doubt that at all. I'm never going to read a Harry Potter book. I haven't got the foggiest interest. But J.K. Rowling can still be a personal fucking hero. There's a lot of stuff that Brother Malcolm wrote that I either might not have read or might have profoundly disagreed with, but Malcolm X, personal hero, not on First Amendment grounds, but on racial political grounds. Oh, the irony. The podcast is amazing. The podcast is amazing. Please, let me just drive that home one more time, but I want to bring it home with regard to that connection. It was over the course of this woman's career, and she never changed. She never changed. Everything that I've read about the text of her books is all about acceptance, all about diverse groups of people coming together, finding ways to not alienate each other, to find ways to work together. Concepts like good versus evil. Simple enough, yes? But over the course of a 20-year period, as Robert Anton Wilson said, Nothing about that woman changed. Not one single thing about that woman changed over the course of a 20-year period. What changed was which side decided they hated her and for what reason. And oddly enough, some of the same people on the right that might have been more extreme right, Jesus junkie extreme right, back in the day, have come around to defend the woman. The difference between the political left and the political right is that one side, and this is, again, your mileage may vary, getting back to where we were way back in the day, that existential threat. The difference is the right, A, will allow for you to vary from the orthodoxy, but B, the right has actually evolved, as evidenced not by their rhetoric but by their behavior. When it comes to the left, where was what university is regarded to be the birthplace of free speech? Berkeley, right? What happened at Berkeley when they tried to bring Milo Yiannopoulos to speak? My favorite fag, Milo. I love him. Good looking man. He's all about black dudes, but good looking man. What happened? They tried to bring Milo out there. Physical political violence. They torched the campus. They did tens of thousands of dollars worth of damage to those buildings to keep him from speaking on a campus that was generally thought of as the birthplace of free speech. Why? It's almost like they didn't really mean it. Because at the time, keep in mind, free speech movement coming out of Berkeley. Who was in charge back then? Nixon. It was the old guard. It was the old school. It was the old network of politics. Hardcore conservative. Trying to shut down speech that might have gone against the Vietnam War. Trying to shut down speech that would have gone against the military-industrial complex. And they were quite right to shake their fist at God, get up in people's angry, bitter little faces and say, you will not tell us what we can or can't say. But judging by their actions now, it's almost as if they only meant it for their side, because the minute they control all facets of American culture, and they do, make no mistake, they do. Once they control academia, once they control entertainment, once they control the news media, what happens? Shut him up! Chuck Schumer didn't call. This is Chuck Schumer. Senate Majority Leader Chuck fucking Schumer. He didn't call for Tucker Carlson to be ridiculed. He called for him to be pulled off the air. He called for Tucker's employer to silence him forcibly. In the same way that, thanks to the work of Matt Taibbi, we have found out leftist elements within our own government have worked with private corporations specifically to stifle conservative speech. This is no longer open for debate. It happened. I will state my opinion for the record based on my own observations. The left has never been serious about free speech. Their tolerance only extends to the point where they can exercise control, and at that point free speech becomes, a polite suggestion. I will further submit to you that if they could, they would have every single, again, drawing a distinction between liberals and leftists, don't get it twisted. But the hardcore leftists that are running the show right now with regard to all of the cultural institutions, the media, academia, entertainment, and the people that follow them, they would have every single one of us gulagged or crucified if only they had the power. And the regime right now is working for that power. We should all be fucking terrified. I will continue to stand with somebody like Tucker, who I might not even like necessarily. I mean, for the record, I think he's the only voice that still has a spine and balls over at Fox. Everything else, controlled opposition. But you can call him a scoundrel, and I will continue to stand with his right to present the facts. And I will not hear that those videos were cherry-picked from the side that just spent the last 2 years playing us cherry-picked videos and lying directly to our faces. We'll get more into that when I hit on the second bullet point. The important link. Larry Flynt. Definitely a scoundrel. And the only reason he advocated for free speech, it wasn't about democracy. He wanted a right to peddle pussy pics. His importance to the First Amendment and to free speech and to free expression was almost accidental. He was a very bad man. That's just about any standard of measure. The angel in this story would be J.K. Rowling. She never wanted to be involved politically. Never. She wanted to write good children's fiction, and she did. But she became an accidental advocate for free speech, in much the same way that Flint did. Flint had his own perverse reasons for fighting as hard as he did to be able to put out that degenerate fucking material that we've all jerked off to at one point or another. He became an accidental hero for the First Amendment. J.K. Rowling, man, she would have been cool just being beloved by children and teenagers and having her little fan base for the rest of her life. She got thrust into the movement for having the audacity to speak an opinion that varied from the orthodoxy, and in so doing became an accidental advocate for free speech and free expression. Rowling has always, in her fiction, my understanding, again, I haven't read a single book, but my understanding is that she has always advocated for the underdog, the misfit, the little guy. That makes her fairly fucking angelic on a whole lot of levels. Flint just wanted to peddle pussy pics. But look at their importance. They both accidentally thrust in the middle of a debate at the very core of free expression, which itself is at the very core of all things Western. Without free speech, the West dies. Believe you me, the people that try to extinguish free speech fucking know it. It was that and only that backed the right wing off of their censorious ambitions. Censorious, that's my college word. I got like 3 of those. Because they caught their snap. Holy shit. If we can shut them down today, once they're in control, they can shut us down tomorrow. The left realized that a long time ago, and they took a very different strategy. Let's hurry up and get control so we can shut them up forever. How come you're picking on the left, Bart? It's always about the left, man. The left isn't who is crucifying Flint's work and Rowling's now? Who is it? Who presents an existential threat to free speech, and oddly enough, all the while calling us fascists? Censorship is the child of fear, the father of ignorance, and the desperate weapon of fascists everywhere. No truer words could be spoken. And look who's choosing to censor, all the while calling us fascists. You guys tracking here? Hustler and Harry Potter. A glossy mag full of degenerate material of objects going into holes that clearly anatomically they weren't meant for. Harry Potter, beloved series of fiction. I don't know how many books there are. I want to say, 8, 6, half dozen, whatever. Beloved series of children's fiction, known the world over. Brilliantly written, from what I understand. One is no less important than the other. I would venture to say, if I had to choose which was more important, I would say it is that magazine full of fucking degeneracy that Flint pulled out. Why? Because of what Mencken said about defending scoundrels. If you can push to censor Larry Flint, you can push to censor J.K. fucking Rowling. Once upon a time, I would have been called alarmist for saying that. Not even that long ago, 10 years ago, back during the Jesus Junkie era, if had Rowling been around, but even 10, 12 years ago, if I would have said to you, no, we can't censor, big spread open pussy shots. No, we can't censor Larry Flint, because if you censor Larry Flint today, you're going to come back and censor that lady that wrote Harry Potter tomorrow. Oh my God, Bart. There you go with that. What? 3 words. Starts with an S. There you go with that slippery slope fallacy. Slippery slope is not a fallacy when it has precedent. There's a reason why Mencken's quote extends to that. If it is to be stopped, it's got to be stopped at the beginning. Why? Because it is inevitable. There are too many people whose lives are so fucking insignificant. They have so little control over their own shit that they have to tell you what to think, how to joke, what, who, and how you fuck. They want that control over your life. Maybe because they have so little control over their own. They project their need to have some higher authority dictate to them. They project that need on you. They can't control their own urges. They can't control their own thoughts. They can't control their own lives. And because they can't, the fact that you can throws their weakness and stupidity into starker contrast. They have to be able to tell you what to read. They have to be able to tell you what to think, what is and isn't okay to say. No, Larry Flint can't put out naked photos of hairy pussy. Because it's degenerate. Well, no, I'm not going to allow you to cut that off because you'll be able to cut off beloved children's fictions authors somewhere down the line. Oh, no, Bart, it'll never happen. Only it is. Larry Flint was presenting something that a certain element did not want seen. Rather than educate people to the nature of this is degenerate shit, this is exploitive, this and that. No. Shut him down. Censor him. It's the mark of the weak. It's the mark of a coward. Some of the same people that want Larry Flint censored for the other reason, going in the other direction. No. We've got to shut him down. Why? Because it's exploitive to women. Hey, all right, cool. So you're all about women's rights then, right? Right. So we have the author of a beloved series of children's books who is all about women, biological women, and their rights. Oh no, we've got to shut her down too because that differs from the orthodoxy. You understand there's no end to this. I give to you that, and this is insensitive and indelicate and everything you've come to expect from me. I submit to you, sir or madam, that Harry Pussy and Harry Potter are equals and are no different when it comes to their importance to the debate over freedom of expression. I admire J.K. Rowling because she was one of the few people early on when Trump had just become president. He was going to go to England, and there were people calling for him to be banned from entering the country, banned from speaking over there. And she went before a group of people over there, and she basically said, "Yes, I understand your sentiments. I don't like the man. I find him racist, sexist, abhorrent, you know." All of the derogatory words she could come up with. As she waited until the applause, the thundering applause died down, and she said, "But we can't." And again, I'm paraphrasing as I'm quoting from memory, but it basically came down to the same thing. If we can shut him up today, they can shut you up tomorrow. People wouldn't hear it. You want to know why they wouldn't hear it? Because they need the opposition shut up. They are weak, they are fearful, they are easily fucking led. And as a result, we have to be able to get past that fear. We've got to be able to get past any of these things. And for you guys that are here that are friends or fans, if you're fans of the show or friends of me personally, that's not going to be an issue for you. You wouldn't be here if you didn't already fucking feel that way. But Weasley versus Ron Jeremy. How oppressed were these women as they cashed her check? Exactly. Thank you very much. Equality for women, let men compete in women's sports, it'll be fine. Here's the thing, Steve, it goes into all of that. I swear to you, man, the podcast goes into every bit of that and why she is a true advocate for women. And specifically why the orthodoxy hates her. Check it out, The Witch Trials of J.K. Rowling. It's a phenomenal fucking podcast. And I came away feeling like J.K. Rowling was my fucking hero. Right up there with Larry Flint and everybody else who ever took a bullet for free speech. She's going to be fine. She's going to be fine. She could have retired off to the side. What was a fucking billionaire? She could have retired off to the side, didn't have to say another word, didn't have to let anybody know anything. Could have just lived a nice, comfy life out there in the English countryside. Perfectly comfortable. She took that stand because she could. And they go into that in the podcast. She felt like, everybody's going to say, yeah, you're coming from a position of privilege. She was like, but that's the thing. I'm in a position of responsibility, she said. I have a responsibility. Because a lot of people can't speak out because they don't have the money. They can't take on cancel culture because they don't have the money. They can't afford to be put out of a job. They can't afford to be excoriated publicly. They can't afford to be run out of an industry. She said, but I can. And because I can, I must. God bless that woman, man. I'm sure she wouldn't like me very much at all. But God loved that woman. I'm sorry, James. Freedom of speech is simple. If I don't defend your right to say what you want, I don't deserve the privilege of saying what I want. Agreement with that. Agreement with what he said has zero to do with it. Fucking A right, brother. Fucking A right. Oh, hey, right on, brother. All right, yes. Get some rest, Ryan. Catch the replay. Thank you, dude. Rabbit hole. Awesome. Good call this week, man. Be safe out there. Neither of the two are more or less important. We can get reflective on a lot of things, and that basically segues nicely into the potential vulnerability that we have with regard to self-reflection. I wanted to get into real quick, just Russell Brand. The article was from the New Statesman. Get this. This is their go to newstatesman.com. This is at the top of their page, and this is what made it so funny to me that I had to say something about it. Support 100 years of independent journalism. That's the header at the top of the page. The New Statesman, big block letters, support 100 years of independent journalism. And what is the name of the article? We have lost Russell Brand. This once sexy leftist has become an American culture wars pundit. Once sexy? He's still fucking sexy, bitch. I'm not trying to tell tales out of school, but if I ever found myself locked down with the man, I'm just saying. Him and Milo. What, you think I got you shamed? Don't get it twisted, son. Here's why it's funny. We have lost Russell Brand. That mere statement implies fucking ownership. And it's very telling. Because that's exactly how they view those members of their team until they break from the orthodoxy. They lost J.K. Rowling a long fucking time ago. She will forever be off the radar, excoriated. There's no coming back. Again, the woman's my fucking hero. Right up there with Larry Flint, degenerate scumbag that Flint was, man. He was a hero on fucking free expression grounds. He took that bullet for all of us. God, weird little flash there. God forbid, the way the political violence is getting, there might be one out there with J.K. Rowling's name on it. Sorry, that right when I thought that, it was just, ooh, it felt like a knot in my fucking guts. Wow. Okay, that was weird. Sorry, guys. They lost Russell Brand. They lost J.K. Rowling. They lost Bill Maher. Right, Dennis. That's it. They're losing anyone who is sane. They lost Bill Maher. They lost Russell Brand. They lost fucking Matt Taibbi. They lost Greenwald. I'll spare you the long drawn out version of it. But what happens to a dying star? It gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And as it collapses in on itself, it gets hotter and denser, and there's more heat, and there's more gravity, and there's more heat, and there's more gravity, until the fucking thing either explodes and goes supernova, destroying everything around it, or folds in on itself and becomes a black hole, sucking everything in and destroying everything around it. That is the left. I've used that analogy before on the sermon. You guys have been around for a while. You've heard me use it. It gets smaller and smaller, and as it does, as it shrinks, that intensity gets hotter and denser and hotter and denser and hotter and denser. And right now, I'm just waiting for that moment when it all goes supernova. As they feel their power slipping away, Red Giant first. Thank you, Joey. Thank you, Joey, for the astronomical correction on my analogy. You fuck. But you guys understand the strength of the metaphor. You understand the point that I'm trying to get across. And it's, yeah, we are. We find ourselves on the event horizon. That just became part of the analogy, Joey. I appreciate that. You get a co-writer credit for that. That's where we are. They're losing anybody who is sane. See, I was going to let it alone. Joey, on the other hand, yeah, I know. Well, he can't help himself, man. He can't help himself. They lost Russell Brand. They lost Matt Taibbi. They lost J.K. Rowling. They lost, as Dennis was saying, everyone who is sane. The easiest way to keep people from this is a danger, and something I picked up listening to Andrew Klavan. One of the things that the West has demonstrated an ability for that no other culture really has is the guilt of self-reflection. The example that he gave was the Greeks conquering the Trojans, right? Greeks conquer the Trojans, and then write stage plays about how horribly the Trojans were treated. Do you think the Mongols wrote stage plays about the horrible treatment of all of the people that they conquered? Do you think that the Chinese, for instance, and again, I'm more than happy to be proven wrong here. If there is someone out there whose wheelhouse is obscure Chinese stage plays, I'm all about it. Do the Japanese write long volumes feeling guilt about the rape of Nanking? Do any of the internecine warring tribes of sub-Saharan Africa reflect on how badly they treated the people that they conquered? That is unique to the West. And to keep us from reflecting on the truth behind things, to keep us from speaking even, or exploring issues about things that they wish to center, and Stone, it is good to see you. The two things they keep using to blind us are guilt and fear. Because that sense of historical guilt is unique to the West, and they know it, that it is a weakness and a vulnerability. Yeah, right. Thank you, Roman. Yes, they wrote the plays, only each is the hero in their own story. That's exactly what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying. Even now, you look at the films that are being produced in China's equivalent of Hollywood. Every atrocity they ever committed on the battlefield in fucking Korea is commemorated as them being the hero in their own fucking story. What do we have coming out of Hollywood here? White men are evil. Dances with wolves. Terrible, terrible fucking people. All the horrible things that we've done. We've never done anything good. Feel guilt, feel guilt, feel guilt. Don't look at any of this stuff and try to assess the shit for yourself. Don't do it. Guilt and fear. Guilt and fear. Reflection is an essential part of moving forward. That's in the microcosmic level, on the macrocosmic level. When I got off of hard drugs, it was important for me to reflect before I could move forward. When I've come out of tortured relationships, you have to take the time to heal and reflect before you move forward. What would happen if I was coming out of one of those horrible relationships, and while I was taking that period of reflection, rather than seriously assess where I was at, I let somebody else get in my ear? Say, hey, dude, you were a bad person. You never did anything good, man. Every fucking thing that ever came out of you within the context of that relationship, it was bad, man. It was bad. You didn't do anything good. How? If it's true, then it needs to be said. Nobody's that fucking monstrous. We have to be able to honestly reflect before we can move forward. That's on the microcosmic level. That's on that personal level. So where do you think we are culturally? Where do you think we are culturally, and why? Oh yeah, I saw that one, Dennis. I saw that. Why do you think they need so badly for us to not reflect on things? Because the most certain way to erase a culture is to deny it a sense of its own importance. When was the last time even with this circle of people that we got, when was the last time you heard people telling their kids how great America was? I don't mean like our friends, right? We are a close knit group and we understand this stuff. But when was the last time you just heard it in passing? People talking about what a great country this fucking place is. They'll tell you everything. They'll tell you everything that's wrong with it. They casually fail to mention that, yeah, it's such a horrible, racist, exploitive, violent, crime-ridden country that everybody else in the fucking world will cross oceans to get here. We're being denied the chance to do serious reflection. The Greeks conquered the Trojans. They wrote stage plays about how horribly the Trojans were treated, but ultimately the Greeks still recognized the greatness of the civilization that they had created. The Romans, the same. There were stage plays written about people that the Romans conquered and how horribly they were treated. But the Romans never forgot that they were the children of Rome. It wasn't until the very end when they lost that cultural identity, largely because they had overextended the empire. Starting to sound familiar? That they were collapsed from within due to degeneracy. They lost sight of who they were. Why? We find ourselves in a similar position, fall of Rome and all that. Only we are not allowed to reflect. We are compelled to apologize for every historical injustice, and we are forbidden to thump our chests and revel in every historical accomplishment. What do you suppose is the end game there? What do you suppose is the inevitable outcome? And how do they keep us from reflecting? Two things: fear and guilt. Here is an easy example. You make people afraid to look at things. Getting back to the censorship thing we were talking about earlier. For instance, the Ukraine pipeline thing. Somebody tries to present very, very real evidence of U.S. involvement. Seymour Hersh, no less, Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist, presents evidence. Don't look at that. It's coming from a right-wing extremist outlet. Be afraid. Anything that comes from Tucker Carlson is immediately suspect. Oh, cool. Well, can I just look at it and see what he... No! No! You can't! It's too much. He's a fascist. Really? Because I'd like to verify that. Could I just like watch his show and see if he's doing like stiff arm salutes and calling people niggers and stuff? Could I do that? No! Let us do your thinking for you, son. In much the same way that the priesthood said that the Bible was too fearsome an idea for the peasantry to comprehend. Don't look at that. That's scary. Don't look at a lab leak theory. That's insane. Don't look at the people that promote this thing because they are frightening, they are evil, they are Nazis. Make them afraid. And when that doesn't work, give them guilt. Fear and guilt. Keeping us from honest self-reflection, knowing that it takes honest self-reflection for us to be able to move forward. That's on an individual level, and that's us collectively, culturally. Fear. Anyone who tells you that we ever did anything good is a Nazi and a right-wing extremist, a xenophobe, a racist, a colonizer. Well, could I read what they're saying and actually... No, it's way too scary. Way too scary. Take our word for it. Tucker Carlson. He's putting out video. Did he selectively edit the video? Not a doubt in my mind. I'm going to be happy when all of it is released to everyone, as it will be. But my question is, who was the team that kept it under wraps for over 2 years, and why? What, because there was stuff in there that would have fucked with the security of the Capitol? Okay, I still haven't seen anything that fucks with the security of the Capitol. Is Tucker cherry picking? Sure. You know what they call that? Everything that we've seen for the last 2 years. How much cherry picking was done to provoke one fucking narrative? And now they're merely presenting the other side? Well, hey, man, could I just look? Could I just go over here and look at what Tucker's doing? No, don't look. It's dangerous. It's dangerous for anyone to be able to see these videos and come to their own conclusions. National security. Got to keep it under wraps for national security. How did the left feel about that during the COINTELPRO era? Folks, it may come back around to a point where the Jesus junkies are back on top and in control and in a position where they are the existential threat to freedom of expression, to legitimate representative Republican government. It could happen. Bet your ass, in the same way that I did when that was the case before, I'll be screaming and raging against it. Same as I did then, same as I will continue to do, because it's an argument based on principle. It may come around a time again where the Jesus junkies are the ones representing an existential threat to free speech. That could happen easily. The pendulum swinging back and the backlash after as far as the left has pushed it, that backlash is going to be ugly. It's going to be ugly. And we could go far enough in the other direction that once again, quote-unquote conservatives find themselves on the forefront of stifling fucking free speech. I hope not. Should it come to that, bet your ass that as I did before, I will continue to rage against that. That is the principled argument. I won't have false equivalencies drawn, nor will I abide such a thing. But if he gets back to the right saying, you can't express that opinion and why, bet your ass is knuckles up either way. For me, this is a matter of fucking principle. And it doesn't matter if they're trying to censor Harry Pussy or Harry Potter. End result is the same. I will go to the wall. I will fucking fight you every step of the way. And no amount of guilt and no amount of fear is going to keep me from making honest assessments, honest reflections. This is why it is so important for those parties concerned to shut down any reasonable debate. They cannot have you come to your own conclusions. In an open marketplace of ideas, guys, say it with me. You've heard me say it 1,000,000 times on this program. Fundamentally, people are suckers for what? The truth. The only way the truth doesn't win out is when a lie is the only narrative allowed to be presented. Germany in the 1930s, the entire Soviet era in Russia, communist China now, the only way, the medical industrial complex during the COVID pandemic. Boy, that was a tangent, wasn't it? Not really. It's the same basic principle. The only way the truth doesn't win is when a lie is the only narrative allowed to be presented. Historically, that is irrefutable. So when people try to shut down legitimate discussions on anything for any reason under any premise, that lets me know that they're liars. The truth does not need a law to protect it. You're trying to deplatform Larry Flint because he publishes dirty pictures and he writes articles about your favorite televangelist, politician, what the fuck ever. You got to shut him down. Why? Why? Don't make it about the pussy. This isn't about that. J.K. Rowling has the sheer audacity to state that women are women and that women should have their own cultural autonomy and their own protected spaces. She's labeled it turf. My God, when you look into this podcast, and again, I went on a deep dive. I got done with the podcast. I started looking into some of the stuff that's been leveled at her. Literally, people saying, I'm going to choke her with my fat trans dick. It was an actual threat, and it dozens of those. Because she had the audacity to speak the truth as she saw it. Why do you need to shut her down? How is that any different how is that any different? It's not, because it's a legit biological male threatening to rape a woman. But Twitter left the tweet up. Pre-Elon Musk, Twitter left that tweet up. No violation of community standards. Why? Because she's an apostate. And apostates have to be crucified and fucking beheaded. Do you understand? Are you tracking? When you tell me that I have to shut this person down because their ideas are too fucking dangerous, I know you're a liar. I know you're a fucking liar. And every agenda that you represent subsequent to that is a lie. I'll go back to scripture. I'll be Jesus tearing through the temple, turning over tables. You have turned my father's temple into a den of thieves. You are a lie and the father of it. Your father's work you will do because Satan is your father, and your father's work you will do because he is a lie and the father of it. Y'all feel me? I didn't mean to get all scriptural on you, but I'll go fire and brimstone on your ass with the quickness. This is a passionate issue for me. When you tell me that something can't be presented, that's too dangerous to be presented, I know that you are a liar and a coward. One day it may come around. Maybe even sooner than later. Don't draw false equivalencies for me, though. Miss me with that whole... What about your boy DeSantis down in Florida, man? He's pulling books off the... No, he's not. No, he's not. I did the dive on that. You want to know the best thing that he could have done? Was that news conference that he held this week. He pulled those off the shelves because they were being placed in close proximity to children. I would not let a government ban Larry Flint's pussy pics, but I totally get it when North Carolina, when I was a kid, passed a law saying that they couldn't be out on the main magazine rack. They had to be back here behind the counter because they didn't want kids looking at it. That's not censorship. That's not an infringement on free expression. That's fucking looking out for your kids. Yes, Larry, you can still put out your pussy pics. We're just going to have them back here behind the counter. Still buy them. Still want our kids looking at them. What did DeSantis do? He pulled them off. They tried to tell you it was harmless. It was harmless. They were making way too much of it. So he said, okay, I'm going to call your bullshit. And he had a press conference. It was like, yeah, these are the books that are... put out that they're saying are harmless to kindergartners. Here's a picture, and the news had to cut the feed. Why? Because maybe showing a 5-year-old a picture of someone sucking another guy's cock is a bad fucking idea. Is the book banned? No. Is it allowed in school libraries where children can access it? No. And I'll go you one better. That same book, I would be raging with this exact intensity if any government, anywhere, anytime, went to that publisher and said, you can't put out that book of the guy sucking the other guy's cock. We can't have it. It's too dangerous an idea. I would be raging with just as much fucking intensity. You don't get to spit lies to me and expect that I'm not going to treat you like a fucking liar. You can lie. That's the beauty of that fucking free expression. You can lie. But that same First Amendment, that same principle of free speech and free expression protects my right to call you out as a liar and the father of it and let people know who they are lying to and how. As I just did, courtesy of Ron Bo down in Florida. We need to get real fucking specific, people, rolling forward. And know. And treat it accordingly. Because it could come back to that. It really could. The pendulum has been pushed so fucking far in this direction that when that backlash comes back, you don't know how ugly it's going to get. And we have to be just as exacting and hold our own side to account, because I would like to think that conservatives have truly evolved now. You want to know the difference? I'll run back through the pictures. You want to know the difference? Taibbi used to write for Rolling Stone. Tucker Carlson will have Taibbi on his show now. Do you think Tucker Carlson is going to get a positive mention or even be allowed in an article presented in a positive light in Rolling Stone? How about Greenwald? None of the major networks will touch Glenn Greenwald anymore. He is an apostate and he is treated accordingly. Tucker will still have him on, but not vice versa. Russell Brand. He was just on Gutfeld's show last fucking night. Back in the day, they loved him. He was on, he was the darling. He was the little pretty motherfucker that he's always been. But his politics aligned with him. They had him on every station until he questioned the orthodoxy. This is how it works. Our side has evolved to the point where we will entertain products of the other team. The other team is a fucking cult, and they will allow no dissent. What did I just say? The minute you tell me that this is too dangerous an idea to be presented, you are a liar. And everything out of your mouth is suspect after that. It could very easily, very quickly, as part of that pendulum backlash, come back to the point where the right become that existential threat again. That we want to crush every bit of this fucking dissent. I want you to hold me to account. You don't get to draw false equivalencies. I will call you out. I will give you the facts. But I expect to be held accountable. You don't get to tell me to shut up. You don't get to tell me what I can say, who and how I can fuck. You don't have that level of control over me. Particularly when it's based on a lie. So again, we get back to that quote from Laurie Anderson. Censorship is the child of fear, the father of ignorance, and the desperate weapon of fascists everywhere. As I said in the opener, we have to reject that fear. Nothing is too dangerous to be discussed. Nothing is off limits. Nothing. That is how we overcome fear, is to be able to look at those things, even the stuff, especially the stuff with which we disagree vehemently, to be able to look it in the face and have an open and honest discourse in an open marketplace of ideas. That's how you conquer fear. How do we rise above ignorance? Because what is their fear and their lies? What are they looking to enforce but ignorance? There are plenty of people who might have felt differently. Case in point, the Hunter Biden laptop. How many Democrat voters said that they would have changed their voice if they would have known about that? If they wouldn't have been lied to and told that it was Russian disinformation? How many people said they were? How many people felt a certain way about the J6 protocol before all this footage came out? It was already slipping. I presented last week that survey that had come out, that Rasmussen poll that basically said even over 51% of Democrats felt like there was federal government involvement in January 6th. That it was very important that that footage be released. Even a plurality of Democrats agreed. You want to know where I fly in the face of God and the creation myth? What was the fruit of the tree? Tree of what? Tree of what? Tree of knowledge of good and evil. Tree of knowledge of good and evil. Are you really telling me that a benevolent God would want his children ignorant? That's not a God I'm going to bow down to. How strongly do I feel about the truth? You don't get to hide that from me. You don't get to lie. You don't get to specifically keep me in the dark. How do we rise above ignorance? Again, getting back to the Laurie Anderson quote. It is the child of fear. We rise above fear by facing it fearlessly. It is the father of ignorance because by censoring they seek to keep you blind and ignorant. It is the only way they can sell a narrative. What did I just say? The only way they can market that is if their lie is the only narrative allowed to be presented. That is the strength and the danger of that censorship. It is the father of ignorance, and it is the desperate weapon of fascists everywhere. We can dicker back and forth about the political alignment of this particular authoritarian regime versus another authoritarian regime, whether they're fascist, whether they're communist. They're freaks with a sick need to control. You want to call it fascism? Fine. You want to call it communism? Fine. Authoritarianism would be a more appropriate choice of words because that denotes that it's the same whether it's coming from the left or the right. Does not matter. It's a weapon of choice for authoritarians, dictators, control freaks, sick, sociopathic fucks everywhere throughout history that seek to control what you think and how you perceive. I'll go over it again because you know it's part of the quotable Bart now. If you control the perception, you control people's reality. When they need to lie, when they need to tell you that this idea is too dangerous to be looked at, it's the only thing that can carry their lie. It's the only thing that can keep you ignorant. The ignorance of the public is something that every tyrant counts on. Always has, throughout history. But this is the thing about losing the fear. Because what ultimately is worse than people forcibly suppressing information to keep us ignorant, what's even more abhorrent than that is when they just push the fear hard enough to make us keep ourselves in the dark. To where we are no longer a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. We are the blind, being led by the blind and keeping the blinders on ourselves. So above and beyond everything else, we've got to rip those blinders off. We have to have the courage to look the truth in the face, no matter what light it paints us or them or anyone else in. We have to be able to look the truth fearlessly in the face and call it for what it is, without fear, without guilt, and if I may quote Colonel Kurtz, without judgment. Because it is judgment that ultimately defeats us. Chin down, head forward, knuckles up. Speak the truth unflinchingly. Though your teeth rattle and your bones shake, speak the truth without flinch, without fear, without hesitation. But most of all, without fucking apology. I am the Reverend. That is the gospel. Appreciate you guys being here. Thanks to each and every one of y'all. Hey, Tom shows up right here at the end. Appreciate you being here, buddy. Brand is still a communist. Of course he is. Of course he is. Ideologically, he certainly is, but he's got the balls to fucking speak truth. And I will say this: his appearance on Gutfeld last night was actually really funny because they went back to an interview where him and Greg Gutfeld had gone back and forth, and Brand had referred to Gutfeld as a flapping anus, quote unquote, and now here they were, basically seeing eye to eye on a lot of stuff. Because, again, fundamentally, what they are both really, really opposed to is the centralized power having the exclusivity of the means of control, the powerful at the expense of the powerless, which, to some degree is the natural order. What was that? Of course you're going to pull Masashi out of your ass, Tom. God damn it. Masashi would tell you, do not regret what you have done. Thank you very much. Yeah. It was interesting watching the two of them go back and forth, and neither of them apologized for where they were before, but both have evolved, and I think there is, in my heart of hearts, I believe this. I believe there is a cultural evolution going on right now, where a lot of people are. What have we heard from both sides forever? What we need is a third party, bro. What we need is like a third party to get away from everything. That's what we've heard from both sides, but they don't really mean it. What they mean is we need to have a third party that doesn't carry the baggage of the Republicans and Democrats, but I still want that party to look exactly like what I think. I think that third party is happening. There's not a name for it yet. But what it is made up of people who just want to be left the fuck alone. People who want to be in control of their own lives, who don't need everything micromanaged, who know that you should be able to speak the fucking truth about basic biology without being labeled a hate monger. Do people be able to manage their own fucking affairs? That know that poor people are more affected by these laws that fucking that price fossil fuels out of everybody's reach than anyone else. And this is conclusions that they're all coming to from the right or the left. So you find a Russell Brand sitting side by side with a Greg Gutfeld. You know who Gutfeld did an interview with last week? Bill Maher. They're sitting there smoking a joint, having a great fucking time and conversing. They're never going to agree on everything. But God damn it was civil discourse. They had a lot more common ground than they had ground that they did not have in common. And that's most of us. There is that cultural evolution happening. An evolution of politics, an evolution of consciousness, an evolution of all of us coming to realities to where we don't have to knuckle up to avoid being afraid to speak the truth, but to where we are getting to a point where we are compelled to speak the truth. To paraphrase Shakespeare, speak the truth though the heavens fucking fall. Okay, I'm done. I told you I was a little charged up, man. Like I said, this is something that's close to my heart. Something close to my heart, and it really brings it out of me, man. So here we are. In any case, it's civilized, man. They are more discourteous than barbarians. There you go. As always, because they know they can talk that shit without getting their skull stove in with a fucking brick. Or the jawbone of an ass, or whatever it was that Cain used to kill Abel. In any case, I appreciate y'all being here. I'm going to pass that digital collection plate around. You guys want to kick me down some love? That would be outstanding. I'm on Cash App, I'm on PayPal, I'm on Venmo, I'm on all that good shit. You want to throw me a little bit of coin? That would be outstanding, and I would really, really appreciate it. If you can't, believe me, boys and girls, I get it. I do get it. We're still in a Biden economy, reluctantly, and we will be there for a little bit longer. But here's what you can do for me if you're not in a position to toss me a little coin. You can spread the gospel. You turn somebody else onto the program. Repost it on your Twitter feed, your YouTube channel, your Facebook, whatever you can. Just kind of get the word out there, man. The more people we get on. I'm trying to build a community of like minds and kindred spirits here. And you guys are like minds and kindred spirits. Let's see how many more we can find. Appreciate the efforts. And all you guys have been out there spreading the word, man. Spreading that gospel. All of my Reverends, Rangers, my Sinner Sisters, my OG Prophets of Doom, man. Appreciate y'all spreading the gospel. Appreciate y'all being here. But here's what you can do. Not just for me, but for yourselves, guys. Mike, you know the hashtag, live the three, bro. Live the three prime directives. You guys know the prime directives. They will try to bury you with the noise, man. You've got to be that signal that breaks through the noise. Because when the signal and the noise ratio is all fucked up, we are not communicating clearly. You have got to be that signal that breaks through the noise. Because that's all they got left is noise. You got to be that light in a world full of darkness. They will try to bury you with that darkness. They will try to dehumanize you, demoralize you, emasculate you, take away your heart, your soul, and your balls, crushing you with that darkness. You've got to be strong enough to carry the light and be that light in a world full of darkness. But most of all, above everything else, you've got to be that strength in a world full of weakness. That strength in a world full of weakness, because without that strength, guess what, man? Without the strength, you're not going to be able to break through that signal and bust through the noise. You're not going to have the courage and the strength to carry that light through the darkness. And when I'm talking strength, I don't mean just here. I'm talking about here, and here. So be that strength. Throw that weakness into stark contrast and crush it. Signal through the noise, light through the darkness, strength crushing weakness. Live the 3. Appreciate you guys being here, man. Thank you so much. I love y'all, man. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. I see a lot of you guys have struck up your own friendships on Facebook and everything that met here on the program. Happy to see that. In the meantime, between time, you guys take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Stay strong. Stay fucking strong. Ready for that good fight, because you know it's coming. Don't forget, guys, never get blackpilled, because in the end, we win this motherfucker. Mark my words, in the end, we win this motherfucker. I love you guys. I am a Reverend. That is the gospel. See you next Sunday. Peace. Woo, man. Feeling it this week. God damn it. Feeling it. Love y'all, man. See you next Sunday.